Listen carefully. I have spent my life in prayer, in study of the human soul, and in deep communion with God's purpose for mankind. What I am about to share with you is not theory. It is spiritual diagnosis. It is the key that unlocks why your soul feels fractured, why you perform constantly, and why you have not yet experienced the abundant life that God promises to those who return to Him. You have been systematically conditioned. From your earliest years, society and often the church itself embedded a singular command into your consciousness: be invulnerable. Bury vulnerability. Sacrifice the softest, most intuitive parts of yourself on the altar of what others call strength and respect. And you obeyed. You obeyed perfectly. But I must ask you something, and I need you to answer with absolute honesty before God. What has this obedience cost you? I will tell you, it has cost you everything that actually matters. It has cost you your peace. It has cost you your authentic connection with God and with others. It has cost you the fullness of life that Jesus promised when He said, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. You have lost the vibrant child, the authentic self, before the world began its systematic demand that you die to be acceptable. That child was created in the image of God. That child was the source of your genuine power, your capacity to create, your ability to love without terror. He still exists, but he is imprisoned. And as long as he remains trapped in the darkness of your unconscious, separated from God's healing light, you remain imprisoned alongside him. So here is the question that demands an answer. How do you awaken that abandoned child and reclaim what was stolen from you? How do you return to the presence of God within yourself? The answer is deceptively simple. You must return. I have observed this pattern in thousands of men who came to me seeking spiritual direction and healing. The 40-year-old executive, brilliant in negotiations, commanding in rooms, respected by all his peers, but in intimacy, he disintegrates. When loved, he panics, fearing loss. When abandoned, he shatters completely. He cannot express his feelings to his partner because he is not loving as a man. He is loving as a desperate boy seeking the unconditional gaze he never received from his father. When a man finds himself chronically exhausted, when he feels alien even among close friends, when he reacts with disproportionate rage to minor slights, he tells himself he is weak, too sensitive, broken, not man enough, not spiritual enough. He is wrong, profoundly wrong. These reactions are not flaws. They are distress signals. They are the cries of a child trapped in the darkness of your unconscious mind. A child who has never known the Father's love, a child who was never truly seen. God has created us as beings of extraordinary complexity and depth. There is the conscious mind, the personal unconscious, the spiritual dimension where God dwells. Within this sacred terrain live rejected fragments. These are pieces of yourself deemed unacceptable, weak, unsuitable by a society that feared your wholeness and feared your connection to God's truth. The most critical fragment in a man's soul is the inner child, the boy who was wounded, silenced, told to man up when he needed compassion, when he needed to be held and assured of his worth. That boy does not disappear. He retreats into darkness, and from that prison, he controls your emotional reactions, your relationship patterns, your entire existence, invisibly, relentlessly, absolutely. He is separated from God's healing grace by the very walls you built to protect yourself. You have experienced this. You know exactly what I mean. The moment your partner withdraws approval, you panic. Your nervous system floods with ancient terror inherited from childhood wounds. Someone dismisses your feelings and you crumble internally while maintaining a composed exterior. Rejection in any form, even trivial, triggers disproportionate despair. You call this weakness. I call it what it actually is. The little boy reenacting the original wound, hoping this time it will heal. This time, someone will finally stay. This time, his father will finally see him. But here is what I discovered through decades of spiritual work and prayer. Without consciousness, without bringing these wounds into God's light, there is no healing. Only repetition. Only the endless reenactment of the original trauma, each time deeper than the last, each time driving you further from God's intended wholeness. I have come to understand the shadow, the repository of everything we refuse to see, everything we are forbidden to express, everything we hide from God and from ourselves. For man, the inner boy becomes the shadow's anchor. He carries the terror of abandonment, the belief that emotions are dangerous, the conviction that worth derives only from performance and never from simple being, from being God's beloved child. These beliefs crystallize early. When your tears are dismissed as weakness, when sensitivity is marked as feminine weakness, when love feels conditional upon achievement and status and never upon your intrinsic worth. A child cannot reason like an adult. When rejected, he does not blame his parents or society. He blames himself. He blames God. He thinks, there is something wrong with me. I am not man enough. I am not strong enough to be loved. If I were different, they would have stayed. God must not love me either. I must earn His grace through performance. And there, a faithful spiritual architecture is built. Suppress yourself to be respected, or be authentic and be abandoned. This is the first mechanism that fractures a man from himself and from God. This is where the wound originates. This is where we first lose faith in being loved unconditionally. This wound does not fade, it metastasizes. It spreads through your entire existence like a spiritual sickness. You attract cold partners who mirror your absent father. You work under critical bosses who echo your mother's comparisons. You unconsciously recreate the very dynamics you are desperately trying to escape. I call this repetition compulsion. Your psyche attempting to heal the original wound by recreating it, never understanding that unconscious repetition only deepens the scar and separates you further from God's peace. You believe this is fate, unlucky in love, destined to struggle, born under some cosmic misalignment, cursed. But no, this is not destiny. This is an unresolved past. This is a soul separated from its source. Let me be absolutely clear about this. I have stated it many times in my ministry, but I will state it again because most men never truly hear it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, until you bring it before God in radical honesty, it will direct your life and you will call it faith. That statement is not poetry, it is spiritual truth. Your entire life is being orchestrated by forces you cannot see because you refuse to look at them, and because you have not invited God's light to illuminate them. The ego compounds this tragedy. The ego is protective armor. When the inner child is wounded, the ego becomes obsessive, building a fortress of achievement, independence, control. I have watched men build empires in this way. They become professionally successful, financially secure, seemingly invulnerable. Yet internally, they are exhausted, they are starving, they are performing strength, while the abandoned child within them withers. They are cut off from communion with God. Consider what I have observed. The negotiator who cannot negotiate for himself. The leader who collapses in intimacy. The man who knows everyone, but no one knows him. The pastor who preaches grace, but cannot receive it for himself. This is not strength. This is a man split from himself, running on diminishing fuel, never understanding why achievement brings no peace, why success tastes like ashes. Most men never recognize this pattern because society rewards the fortress, not truth. The church often rewards the fortress, not authentic struggle. The harder you build, the further you drift from yourself and from God. Here is what I have come to understand through decades of prayer and spiritual insight. Wholeness is achieved through integration. The boy in your unconscious must be brought into God's light so you can finally hear your true voice. The voice beneath all the armor you have built. The voice that is connected to God's eternal truth. When you acknowledge this child before God, something shifts. The unconscious loses its grip. You reclaim your agency. You reconnect with God's intention for your life. Healing is not erasing the past. It is making peace with it through God's grace. And that begins the moment you look at that wounded boy with absolute honesty and absolute gentleness. Not judgment, not contempt, but compassion. The same compassion God offers you freely. I want you to understand something about authentic masculine power rooted in God's design. No man is born fragmented from his essence. It is encoded into your soul by God Himself like a navigational system, an inexhaustible wellspring of authentic power, creativity, intuition, and genuine strength. This essence is not imposed upon you. It is intrinsic to your being because you are made in the image of God. But society strangles it. The world suffocates it. I have seen this happen 10,000 times in my ministry. Be strong, but not soft. Be confident, but not expressive. Succeed, but never admit struggle. Under this relentless pressure, your authentic masculine energy does not vanish. It suffocates. It retreats, replaced by protective layers built from unhealed wounds. I call this detachment from the archetypal self. Your deepest soul is locked away, gasping for air, waiting to be awakened by God's healing presence. True masculinity, as God designed it, is not dominance. It is not emotional numbness. It is a spiritual state. The capacity to be vulnerable without fragility, to feel deeply without drowning, to lead with presence, to love without losing yourself. It is authenticity wielded as power. It is what Jesus demonstrated when He wept at Lazarus' tomb, when He knelt to wash His disciples' feet, when He allowed Himself to be crucified out of love. Yet for most men, this essence is sealed shut early. The boy who cried is mocked. The boy who felt is called weak. The boy who expressed himself is shamed into silence. The boy who showed his wounds is rejected. So he learns, to be accepted, I must become hard, cold, controlled. I must never show God that I am struggling. The cost is catastrophic. He fractures from the source of his creativity, his authenticity, his genuine strength. He becomes a machine running on diminishing fuel, never understanding why he feels empty despite external success. He walks away from God without even knowing it. I have studied the greatest creative minds, the most fulfilled men, the authentic leaders in history. Every single one possessed what most men call weakness, the capacity to feel, to be moved, to express vulnerability. This is not weakness. This is the foundation of all real power. This is how God works in human hearts. Authentic masculine power is not built on suppression. It is awakened through truth, presence, and trust in God's knowing. But a man defended against pain cannot surrender. He is perpetually vigilant, analyzing, demanding certainty before trusting. And in that frozen state, he abandons his essence and abandons his relationship with God. I want you to recall something. Recall the last moment you suppressed your truth. When you chose silence over vulnerability because speaking felt dangerous. When you performed strength instead of admitting struggle. When you smiled while dying inside. When you told God you were fine when you were falling apart. That was your authentic self being stifled once more. That was childhood survival becoming adult prison. That was faith being replaced by fear. Restoring authenticity is not a moral exercise. It is a spiritual necessity. Reconnecting with your original soul through radical acceptance, shadow integration, and God's transforming grace. When you dare to sit with the parts of yourself labeled weak, broken, emotional, or unmanly, and you declare with absolute conviction, I see you. God sees you. You belong. You are me. Transformation ignites. Healing begins. You begin to feel. You begin to create. You begin to love without terror. You stop pushing for recognition. You radiate from an inexhaustible source, the authentic essence buried within you, forever connected to God's infinite love, waiting to be unleashed. And from that moment, a new journey begins, not becoming, but returning. Returning to yourself, returning to God. I rejected the modern obsession with becoming the best version of yourself. That is ideology, not wisdom. It is performance dressed up as personal development. The real goal, the only goal that matters, is wholeness, integration, coming home to yourself and to God. Individuation is the process. It is the deliberate stripping away of everything that does not belong to you, the borrowed beliefs, the externally imposed roles, the armor built for survival. It is facing your shadow, the rejected parts, and integrating them as yourself through God's transforming love. It is bringing the hidden child, the sealed essence, the forgotten memories into conscious light and into God's healing presence. Individuation is not a climb toward light. It is a descent into darkness, a descent toward the roots of your wounds, toward peace with your past, toward living as your complete being, strong and vulnerable, rational and intuitive, light and shadow, all of it embraced, all of it healed by God's grace. Only through this integration do you escape the fragmented life where you constantly perform for external approval. Only then do you enter a life that is authentically yours, autonomous, profound, whole, and finally at home in God's love. I knew a man, he said, for 35 years I wore a mask. I performed what others expected. I showed strength while shattered inside. I prayed words I didn't believe. But when I began to return to the boy within me, to embrace the parts I despised, to bring them before God with complete honesty, I realized I had never truly lived, not once. And I could never return to that sleep. God had awakened something in me that demanded authenticity. Individuation is not easy. There will be disorientation. You will feel unmoored from the old world, but not yet native to the new one. This is the symbolic death, the necessary death of the false self, so the true self can be born. It is what the Apostle Paul meant when he said, I have been crucified with Christ. And from that chaos emerges profound freedom. Freedom rooted in God's unconditional love. No longer needing external respect because you have finally respected yourself and seen yourself as God sees you. No longer seeking validation because you have finally validated your own existence through God's eyes. Let me give you something practical, something you can do, something that will begin to shift your entire existence toward God's intended wholeness. First practice, the confrontation. Find a photograph of yourself as a child, your real self. Before the world began its work of destruction, hold it. Look at that face. Look directly into those eyes. What do you see? Innocence, wonder, unguarded trust, aliveness before the systematic demand that you die to be acceptable. You see God's image shining through that child's eyes. Now, write a letter to that boy. Not as an adult dispensing wisdom from a position of superiority. Write as someone who has finally seen him. Someone who recognizes what was done to him. Someone who will not look away. Someone who speaks with God's voice of love. Tell him what he desperately needed to hear. You are loved. You are enough. I will not abandon you. I will not betray you anymore. I am proud of you. You were always worthy. God sees you. God loves you completely. This is not sentimentality or mere therapeutic language. This is not platitude. This is the first genuine act of reclamation. This is you beginning to rebuild the broken bridge between the man you became and the child still trapped in darkness, still waiting to be finally acknowledged by you and by God. Second practice, the listening. Sit in silence, in a place where you will not be disturbed. Place your hand on your heart. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Let the noise fade away completely. Invite God's presence into this sacred space. Now, gently invite the child forward. Picture him with absolute clarity. What is he wearing? How old is he exactly? What is the expression on his face? Sadness, rage, fear, longing, all of it? When he is present, and he will be, ask with absolute sincerity and gentleness, what do you need from me that you have never received? What have I been denying you all these years? What are you still asking for? What does your heart long to tell me? Do not rush. Do not censor. Do not judge anything that emerges. You may hear anger. You may hear desperate longing. You may hear a cry so primal it breaks something deep inside you. You may feel tears. You may feel rage. You may feel helplessness. All of this is sacred. All of this is God inviting you home. Write everything down, every word, every feeling. This is the moment He is finally heard. This is the moment decades of silence are broken. This is the moment the wound begins for the first time to soften. This is the moment God touches your deepest pain. Third practice, reparenting. Listen ruthlessly to how you speak to yourself. When you fail, when you fall short, when you make mistakes, when you feel afraid, is your internal voice gentle, encouraging, or is it vicious, critical, contemptuous? Would you ever speak that way to a frightened child? Of course not. Yet you speak to yourself this way constantly, and every word is a fresh wound to the boy inside. Every word separates you from God's grace. It is time to become the father your child needed, the one who saw him completely, who believed in him unconditionally, who held him without judgment or demand, the one who loved him not for what he accomplished, but simply because he existed, the father who mirrors God's perfect love. Picture that boy standing before you. Make eye contact and say these words aloud with absolute conviction, speaking God's truth. You are profoundly loved. You matter more than you will ever know. You don't need to earn rest. You don't need to justify your existence. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are exactly right. You are exactly as God made you. I believe in you completely. I will never abandon you. I am here. God is here. Say it again and again, not until you believe it intellectually, but until you feel it in your body. Until the words bypass all your skepticism and cynicism and finally touch the deepest, oldest wound. Let God's love rewire your brain and your soul. This is conscious self-fathering. This is genuine healing that comes only from your own hands, your own compassion toward yourself, and God's transforming grace. Fourth practice, essence reclamation. What would come alive in you right now if no one was watching? If there were no performance required, if judgment was impossible, if only God's affirming gaze was upon you, what calls to you? What makes you feel most yourself? What makes you feel most connected to God's intention for your life? Not what is productive, not what impresses others, not what generates income or status, but what would genuinely nourish your soul. What would make you feel like you are remembering something you forgot you knew? What would make you feel alive again? Identify it, then do it this week. Not next month, not when you have time, this week. Create something without a predetermined outcome. Move your body in ways that feel free. Sit in silence and simply be present to God. Have a conversation where you speak what is actually true instead of what is safe. Build, make, play. Your authentic essence cannot bloom in rigidity and control. It requires trust. Trust in your instincts. Trust in your timing. Trust in your worth. Trust in your right to take up space exactly as you are. Trust in God's design of you. Fifth practice, the rejection reckoning. Every man carries this scar deep in his psyche. The terror that if you show your true self, you will be abandoned, rejected, cast out, separated from God's love. This fear does not begin in adulthood. It roots itself in childhood, when love felt conditional, when acceptance required performance, when your authentic self was treated as dangerous, when vulnerability was weaponized against you. You learned early, to be safe, I must hide. To be accepted, I must perform. To be loved, I must become someone else. Recall now with complete honesty the deepest rejection you have experienced. Let it surface fully. A parent's dismissal, a friend's betrayal, a partner's abandonment, society's contempt, God's seeming silence. Feel it completely. Then ask yourself with radical honesty, speaking in the presence of God's truth, did that rejection actually define my worth? Did that person's inability to see me prove that I am unlovable? Does God's silence prove He has abandoned me? Answer from your deepest self, not your conditioned mind, but your deepest truth, rooted in God's eternal word. No, I am worthy of love simply because I exist. My worth is not determined by anyone's perception of me. I am God's beloved. God has never abandoned me. God's love is unconditional and eternal. Here is the truth that will set you free. Rejection is rarely about you. It is a mirror reflecting someone else's pain, their fear, their wound, their limitation. Their inability to love you says absolutely nothing about your lovability. It says everything about the poverty of their own capacity. Their wounds are not your responsibility to carry. Healing occurs the moment you stop internalizing others' wounds and return to the unchangeable core truth. You have always been enough. You will always be enough. God declared it the moment He created you. Sixth practice, power retrieval. What moment in your childhood made you feel most alive, most completely yourself, most connected to something greater than yourself? Was it building something with your hands? Playing a sport with total commitment? Creating without self-consciousness? Exploring a world that felt full of possibility? Leading other children? Protecting someone? Playing a game you loved? Moments when you felt God's presence without knowing it? Close your eyes now. Return to that moment with absolute clarity. Where were you exactly? What were you doing? What did it feel like in your body? Who were you before the world began its systematic demand that you become someone smaller? Make a list of these moments, the activities, the states of being, the expressions of your true nature. Then choose one thing from that list and do it this week. Not as exercise, not as therapy. Do it because it calls to you. Do it because it reconnects you to God's intention for you. These are not childish diversions or regression. They are medicine. They are direct expressions of your authentic power before life suffocated it beneath layers of armor and performance. As you reconnect with these lost pieces of yourself, you begin to awaken the man you were born to be, powerful, intuitive, authentic, and completely free in God's love. Seventh practice, authentic expression. There is at least one area of your life where you feel deeply suppressed, where your soul longs to express itself, but something holds you back. Fear, conditioning, the protective armor you have built over decades. Shame before God. Ask yourself with complete honesty, where does this fear originate? Who taught me it was unsafe to be myself? Who taught me God could not handle my authentic self? Then do one small thing to challenge that belief. Cry without shame. Laugh loudly and freely. Speak your truth to someone safe. When you allow yourself to be, truly be, you resurrect the boy who needed no approval to exist. He simply was, completely, without apology. This is how God knows you. This is how He loves you. Eighth practice, joy as resistance. Your soul demands joy. It is not selfish. It is not unnecessary. It is God's invitation to remember that you are alive. Make a list of things that bring you genuine joy but serve no practical purpose. Then do one, not because it is efficient, because you deserve to feel good, because God delights in your joy. When guilt arises, pause and say with conviction, I am worthy of joy without justification. I deserve this. God desires this for me. This simple act begins to dismantle decades of conditioning and suppression. It is an act of faith in God's goodness. The next time self-doubt rises before a crucial conversation, a creative risk, a vulnerable act, a moment that requires courage, pause completely. Ask yourself with sincerity, what would I say to my inner child right now to make him feel safe and genuinely supported? Speak those words aloud to yourself with conviction, with compassion, with authority, with God's truth. I am right here with you. I will not leave you. God will not leave you. It is okay to be afraid. You can still show up. Your voice matters. The world desperately needs what only you can offer. I believe in you. God believes in you. Each time you speak gently to yourself in the face of fear, you rewire the ancient belief that you must be perfect to be worthy. You plant seeds of genuine confidence rooted in God's unconditional love. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, you rise. Find a childhood photograph. Hold it. Look at that boy. Really look. Tell him loudly if you can manage it. You are enough exactly as you are. You don't need to earn love or prove your worth. You are worthy of kindness, safety, and joy simply because you exist. God is proud of you. I am proud of you. Feel the truth. Let them become bedrock in your soul. Ultimately, this is not a journey of becoming. It is a journey of returning. You were once a vibrant, authentic, alive boy. Remember him. God remembers him. God has never stopped loving that boy. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the deepest form of courage. It is how God loved the world, exposed, vulnerable, willing to be broken. Your intuition is not a liability. It is your greatest teacher. It is God speaking to your soul. Love, creativity, joy, presence, everything that constitutes a full human soul, these have always been within you, never lost, only buried, only waiting for God's light to resurrect them. Healing is ultimately one act. Stop the betrayal of yourself. Stop hiding your pain. Stop abandoning the purest part of you. Stop separating yourself from God's grace. When you sit with that child, when you let him cry, create, dream, love without restraint, when you finally listen to what he has been screaming into darkness for decades, you unlock the source of all authentic power. You reconnect with God's eternal design for you. This is the work. This is the awakening. This is the return home. It begins now with you in God's presence.